Well, welcome everyone. We are so excited to have you here with us today. And I just want to welcome you on behalf of the Lewis Stokes Midwest um, Regional Center of Excellence. We welcome you today to our session that is titled Alliance to Alliance, a National LSAMP Brainstorming Session. My name is Brianna Davis Johnson, and I will serve as session moderator for today. And I'm pleased to be here today as I am connected to the LSAMP program. I have the pleasure of serving as the program manager for the Ohio LSAMP Alliance. Just a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to the speakers. First, this session is being recorded. And so we will be making this recording available to you all. You can view it through the Whova app by next Wednesday. Second, we ask that you please provide your feedback about today's session in the post-session survey. And if you have any questions for the presenters, you are welcome to indicate in the chat if you have questions. And we'll also have some time for discussion in the roundtables as well. And finally, this session is scheduled to last about 1 hour and 45 minutes. And it is imperative that we stay on time, especially since we have a lot of different moving dynamics going on. So if we do run out of time for the Q&A at the end of the session, don't worry. We encourage you to use the discussion board to continue the conversation or to reach out to the presenters directly via the Whova app. So with that, I will turn it over to our speakers for today.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to see you here. So this is the Alliance National LSAMP Brainstorming Session. And this is really a session to get us all talking with each other about what we do and what struggles we have, and come up with some solutions and talk about best practices. So quickly, just kind of the agenda, we're going to do some introductions and explanation of the session. And then we are going to break out into round tables, and there'll be some technology as to how you get to those tables. And then at 1 o'clock, we'll come back to this main session room or this main group room and talk about what we've discussed and some key points that were discussed in the smaller groups and wrap it up. So I am Farrah Williams. I am the director of the Kentucky West Virginia LSAMP program. And with us, we have Anique.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anique Ruiz. I am the STEM Inspire program manager in the great state of Wisconsin and WisCamp. So glad to see you all here. And I'd like for our breakout session moderators to come off of mute and introduce themselves as well, starting with Dr. David Cartwright.
My name is David Cartwright. I am the LSAMP program director at Marshall University here in Huntington, West Virginia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tamara Hamilton. I'm the co-PI and project director of the Upstate New York Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation Program, and I am located at Syracuse University.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Hoff, and I am project manager for Indiana LSAMP, and I will be your moderator for the collaboration roundtable this afternoon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eve Melgren. I am a co-PI and project director of the Puma STEM Alliance, which is in the Chicago area, and I'm a faculty member at Elmhurst University. Good to see you all.
Excellent. So yes, again, welcome to everyone. So how this is going to work is each breakout room or round tables, as it's called in the Whova app, will have a topic and some sample questions. So each of the hosts have some sample questions to get the conversation started. The conversation is not formal. It is whatever it ends up being. So let the conversation flow as it will. The group host will keep the conversation active and provide some expertise on the subject. And then someone in the group will keep track of the key points and notes from your discussion. And when we come back to this larger group, we will have each group kind of talk about some of those key notes. And the recorder will also share those notes with Anique and I, we will compile those notes all into one document. and make sure that it's shared with everyone who is here in this session. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. We hope a lot of conversations. So these are the topics of discussion, and you'll be able to select whichever one you want to join. But we have virtual learning and student engagement, challenges through the COVID-19 pandemic. We have intra-alliance cooperation, synergy, and accountability, collaboration among institutions for information gathering and sharing, specialized program design for two-year community colleges, enhancing partnerships that create sustainability and enhance job prospects for students, and ameliorating understaffing and budget challenges across Alliance institutions. Anik, anything you want to share about any of those?
No, I just say that when we go into the breakout rooms, we'd like to hear as much dialogue and contribution as possible. So please share your voice. Even if you feel like you may not be an expert in the topic, there's going to be so much to learn and so much that you will add. So we look forward to your feedback. Thanks, Farah.
And since the conversations will be, we hope, robust, we hope that you will choose the topic and stay in that same roundtable or that same room. And on the flip side of that, we really want to discourage if there's more than one person from your same alliance, we want you to go to different tables or different breakouts. Please do not go to the same one. It would be great to get different perspectives than visiting with people that you work with on a daily basis. So how this works, how you're going to find the roundtables is on the Whova app in the sessions. Make sure you're looking at Friday's agenda. And this is where you click to get to this session. And if you notice, right underneath it is the roundtables. So again, this is how you got to this session. Right underneath it is the roundtable link. But also, to get to the link, you can also go through, if you're looking at the session through the Whova app, you can also click this link if you scroll down towards underneath the video. Deb, is there anything you want to share about that? And she's probably busy answering questions. So I think, yeah, so we have, and so when you click that link, you're going to get something that looks like this. And those are the tables. Notice they are listed for the different topics. So basically, you're going to get there and you're going to pick whichever table you want to go for and have a discussion about. So any other questions or thoughts before we head that direction?
No, I think you explained it really well, Farah. For anyone that does have questions, obviously the chat is still open, the Q&A, so please feel free. We do have folks in this session to help with any technical needs that you may have, but otherwise we are going to have fun. We are going to share. We are going to learn from each other. This is high energy. And so get your coffee, grab your coffee, and we are going to transition into those breakout rooms. If you notice in the chat, there's also a link, thank you, Brianna, that you can click to get directly to those roundtables. And so we have many different avenues and means for you to join us. So please transition and we'll have a lot of fun, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
See you back here at 1 o'clock. Awesome, awesome. So welcome back, everybody. Yes, I think we had some great conversations, and I'm looking forward to hearing everybody's report. So the report is really so that all of us can get the benefit of each of those individual conversations, because obviously there wouldn't be a time for all of us to take part in all 6 topics at once. So this way we can all get the benefit of those robust conversations. So with that in mind, again, the person who shares about your group, if you'll just take a few minutes, make a note that if you're brief, then we'll have more time for all the groups to share, and then maybe have some good conversations afterward as well. And someone, if from your group, if you will provide Anik and I with a copy of the notes that you took, then we will put all of those notes together into one document to share with the entire group. And so once you are selected to report on your group, if you'll just give your name and your institution or your alliance, and then read the topic name or what you're discussed and give some points from your discussion. So these are the groups. So I think we'll just go in order and see what happens. So virtual learning, who wants to report out about that group?
Hi, my name is Dr. Samari Quiñones. I am from the California State University LSAMP Alliance, and I am the reporter for the virtual learning group. Let's see, so we had two top questions that we discussed. The first one is, what were the top challenges that our students faced during the COVID-19 pandemic? And we had a discussion, but the main points were that the students do prefer in-person over online teaching because of the lack of structure that it has on online. And sometimes learning from their homes were not the best environment that conducted for learning. It is harder for students to engage in the courses. For us at the California State system, we actually had to close down our campuses for a semester, summer, and the next semester over. So the research experiences were lost, and we lost students experiencing that learning activity. And also the online environment seemed to be too easy to schedule too many Zoom meetings. And this is for teachers, staff, and students alike. The second question was, what were the top student engagement challenges? And for this one, we did talk about, yes, we had to move online, but we also were able to move our online programming from our alliances to engage our students. So we actually had to be pretty creative in how to engage our students. And even though we were able to do that, sometimes it was low attendance by the students, but we still got some engagement. And both students and teachers felt the effects of the pandemic. So that was like the summary of everything that we talked about.
Excellent. Does anybody have any comments or follow-up questions? Definitely a good conversations, I can tell.
I have one.
Mhm.
So
Go ahead.
I was curious if you guys talked about like, and again, I hate the term post-pandemic because I feel like we're still in it. I've got kids that don't have a vaccine yet, right? But do you guys talk about what lessons were learned? Like, how does things look? Like, do you think that there'll be things, even if you had the opportunity to move fully back in person, are there things that we're going to keep doing, right? That we learned about the way we've been able to the past couple of years, if that makes sense, but making myself clear at all.
Yes, one of the individuals in our group mentioned that even though they are back in person, they do offer kind of like hybrid activities where they allow people to join in through Zoom. So you have people in person and you have people joining online. So we get a little bit of the best of both worlds, because some of us, and I think I'm maybe including myself in this, found that the online environment suit our personalities just a little bit better than when we were in person. And we all have to take advantage of the resources that we have at hand. I hope I answered your question.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so now for the intra-alliance cooperation. And that was a great conversation. I will say that was my group. So we had some good discussions, and Monica will report out on it for us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Anderson. I'm with the Puma STEM Alliance here in the Chicago area. One of the questions was, what is our barriers that we have found? And some of the answers were student transportation, training, completing the reports and organizing on reporting schedules, the pandemic. For new alliances, the database system to use and create and design. Communicating in person, we felt was not the same as with emails. It's better. Everyone was hoping for in person. One of the alliances did mention, though, that Zoom actually was helpful for them because most of their other alliance institutions are 3 to 4 hours apart. So they were able to reach people and spread farther because of Zoom. And Farah had mentioned, which I think was great, that you had hosted virtual hours a certain time of the day in the week. That was helpful with communicating. And one of the other alliances had mentioned that they do a journal club within all the alliances to get people involved. Let's see. Oh, and another alliance had started Microsoft Teams channel with other institutions with communication. And some tools specifically that had helped was FileMaker Pro, which is a database that was used for easy to update and generate reports. I had mentioned that we use Smartsheets. That was really successful for our alliance and other alliances as well. Another alliance had mentioned Commonique platform for virtual conference, and using OVA and Microsoft Teams has been successful. And then we just basically talked about how to try and engage students more to get involved. And we've mentioned for freshmen, the orientation classes and orientation in general to try and get some freshmen involved. Summer bridge programs are a great opportunity to talk with students before the fall starts, talking with high schools. And we felt that mentors are the best way to get mentees involved because they're closer in age and already familiar with the program. Doing flyers in the different departments, faculty to send information to students, and that GatherTown was also successful with our students to get them involved, and that it's as close as getting in person that you can virtually. And that's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go ahead.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I don't know how you tackled all of that in the time that you had. Wow, so efficient. I don't expect anything different from Farah and her team. But that is wonderful. Any feedback, questions, comments for the Intra-Alliance Cooperation Group?
I had a question about the last thing you talked about, the gather time. You said it was the closest thing that you could get to, face-to-face thing while you're online. Explain that to me.
I'm actually not familiar with GatherTown, but Eve, can you help on that to talk about it? Were you involved in that when our students did that?
Yeah, so GatherTown, I guess, is this virtual community where the students can make a little avatar for themselves and then enter into the community. And it can be used, I've even heard of it being used for like a poster session where you can walk your little avatar around and visit people's posters. And I guess if you get close to a group of students, you can start to engage with them. And then if you move away, you can engage with a different group. So yeah, so I have limited experience with it, but I've tried it once and I've heard that it was a good experience for students.
I'm actually going to put it in the chat because I've never heard of it, but I think it's pretty cool and probably a really good way to engage with students. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your question, David. Any others before we move on to collaboration?
I will actually share that one of the Centers of Excellence actually used GatherTown for their conference over the summer. I'm not sure if it was patent models maybe, but one of the Centers of Excellence used it for their conference as well.
Wow. Okay, all right. So we're going to be little people, little avatars on the screen. Well, welcome to the 21st century. So I remember playing Nintendo. I still remember my first Nintendo box. So we've come a long way. Amber, if you want to share out on collaboration among institutions for information gathering and sharing.
We had a fantastic session today on collaboration. I'm going to turn it over to our scribe and session speaker, Robert, to share.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rob Markle. I'm the program manager for the LSPAC Model Center, which you all just mentioned our conference this summer. We did not use GatherTown, but we did use another platform called Communique. It's also called Six Connects. I think there were two companies that merged. But I have heard of GatherTown, and I'm glad that other people are seeming to have success with it, because we have been thinking about using that platform for some of our opportunities. But to the discussion that we had in the collaboration roundtable group, we started out by talking about different technology platforms that we use to communicate and to gather information. Several folks talked about the challenges with the pandemic in terms of how to get information out. They're not able to do as much in person. That is coming back a little bit, but they're having to combine using technology and in-person communication. So we're really seeing a paradigm shift here, and we have to be able to pivot. A lot of us were really trying to build networks, and some folks mentioned that we're trying to go where the students are. People are finding students will often use things like Slack, WhatsApp, Discord, things like that. And folks might go there and establish a Slack group or a WhatsApp group. But then there's challenges to that. There's challenges to monitoring those platforms. Take some capacity to monitor them. And it was also brought up that there was more than one person in our group that talked about being hit with a technology hack. And so Zoom is not as secure as other things like Teams, and so there are challenges with that. We talked about some security issues, how to manage and ensure security. But I think the biggest piece of the discussion, what we really we got on, we went down a rabbit hole, and I think for a good reason, about is sharing of information among alliances and programs and centers. And we thought that it would be great if there were a centralized place for everyone to be able to share these best practices across LSAMP programs. These might exist within alliances, but there isn't a central forum for this. And it seems like there's a lot of silos, and people may be doing some great things, but it would be great if we can have a way that we can learn from each other more easily. And so, the examples brought up that the BD programs are often very different, and there might be some usefulness in having them be more consistent, while at the same time, of course, allowing them to have certain adaptations that make sense for their own populations that they serve. So I think, whenever you're implementing a large scale initiative that is national, you really, there's a balance. You got to have some degree of standardization, but you also have to have local adaptations, because each program is going to have different challenges and barriers and populations. So we really talked about having a place where, as I mentioned, we could assess what other people are doing and just get some aggregated data as well on the collective impact of LSAMP. And so, having a place for that, I think would be really beneficial, and I think could really maximize the potential of LSAMP as a whole.
Awesome. Thank you so very much, Robert and Amber and your team. Sounds like you really got down to some of the nitty-gritty issues around collaboration, information gathering, and sharing. Anyone have any feedback? There's a couple of items we put in the chat based on what our teams have referenced so far, but anyone want to provide feedback or have a question for the group? Okay. We may not have as many techies in the in the room to talk to us about that platform, but Robert, I think you're right in terms of looking for how we can leverage our collective expertise across institutions and disciplines to try to create that. And so hopefully we'll be able to get that underway. Please also feel free to, if you can't come off of mute for whatever reason or share your video, to also post your questions and feedback in the chat. And so we have the benefit of that collective knowledge. I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Ms. Farah, to lead us in the remaining 3 different topics.
Yeah, so the next on board is community college discussion for Tamara Hamilton's group.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Anita took the notes for us from the Indiana Alliance. So I'll make sure she'll pass those over to you, and I'll report out for the group because I don't see Anita on the participant list. But the community college discussion is always great when you have 4-year institutions there and then also community colleges there, because we are able to share ideas on both sides of the spectrum. So 3 big themes that came out in our discussion is around research experiences, building community, and also providing mentoring or access to courses at the 4-year institution. So as far as research experiences, we talked a lot about how you really have to tailor the research experience to meet the needs of community college students. Many of these students work full-time, they have family responsibilities, and they just can't leave work for the summer to live in the dormitory or work full-time with a research professor. So different things we threw out is to have a part-time research experience, or if the 4-year institution is local to the community college, have the students be able to come to campus. That works better than to have them travel across the country to live in the dormitory. Also, for faculty or at the community college that are able to offer experiences, to have those be a small mini project or something that they can do at their home. I talked about a virtual research experience we had on my campus this summer that community college students participated in, that they actually had the material shipped to their home. And another community college professor talked about shipping microscopes to the students' homes. So then they can be at their home participating at the research experience, and they didn't have to leave to end up going to the community college. Other things we talked about is having research abroad, international research, and Ben Flores talked a lot about that. Also documenting the experiences that students are doing versus as videos or other media to be able to tell the story. And then also using the research conference as an opportunity for students to present their work, or at one institution offering a research course that students can participate in and be able to gain exposure. As far as community, COVID-19 has hit institutions very hard, so it's been very difficult to building that community virtually, but that is something that's found to just be very important to the students at the community college. And just lastly, building that partnership with the 4-year institution, whether it's through peer mentoring or access to courses or classes, visits, things like that. Just in conclusion, 2 questions that were thrown out to the group is, one, what's the impact of COVID-19 enrollment? COVID-19 has hit the enrollment of community colleges very hard, and it will take several years for them to recover. I threw the question out to the group, like, what can we help with? How can, as a 4-year institution, what can we offer? And then just lastly, just thinking about challenges. I work at a private institution. Tuition is very high, and we talked a lot about how to make college at the four-year institutions more affordable, or being able to offer scholarships to students to get them transferring over. So that's us. We ran out of time. It's always a great discussion.
So I will actually add on the idea of scholarships for the transfer. Here in Kentucky, the Bluegrass Community College and Kentucky State University, the HBCU, they have an agreement where if a student transfers from BCTC to KSU, and if they meet all the requirements of the program, they get tuition provided when they transfer to the HBCU. So that's a great program for some students. Okay, excellent. Any other feedback or questions for the group?
So I'll contribute again. So, one of the things, and I'm a faculty member at a small regional college, right? And we have several community colleges that are very close to us, and we serve lots of students that go through that specific process. And, one of the things that's always interesting to me is that, you look at the solicitations, they always talk about, oh, is there an articulation agreement, right? And at least to me, like, we already belong to, I believe, like, our state has the IAI, the Illinois Articulation Initiative. So like the courses count, right? So like, it's not necessarily that they're not getting college credit. It's that when I'm advising, they haven't taken Gen Bio or organic chemistry, right? And wanted to get out in 2 years, but it's basically the freshman and sophomore piece. And so at least to me, one of the big challenges, and I'm not necessarily even from an alliance standpoint, just as a faculty member that advises transfer students, is just some ways about, as four-year institutions, ways of basically saying, look, here's your four-year course plan. Take these at, for us, it would be Triton Community College or the College of DuPage, right? And then take these courses at Dominican. And we could do a better job, I think, of just talking about the pathways, as opposed to, oh, we've signed a special articulation initiative, right? Because that makes sense sometimes, at least for like a specialized, like, I don't know, advanced engineering or into a master's program, but just for a regular program, like, it's all there. Like, it's all there. We just have to direct students towards the specific individual pathways. So that's been something I've been kind of harping on people to just basically say, oh yeah, we got to make it so it's not as confusing, right? Because again, every single numbering system is different across every single private college, right? Or public, institution. So we could put that on our websites, right? Or as an alliance, we could be working together to make sure that we make it a little bit more transfer friendly for a lot of the students that I'm getting, and then I'm really trying to get out in 2 years, but I'm like, we got 3 years of coursework to get you out in 2 years, right?
Absolutely. Very good comment. Are there any others?
I'll share Farah as well. And I like that comment from Chris. In our statewide alliance, our regents decided that all of our kind of 2-year schools are going to merge into the 4-year schools due to budget issues and other reasons why they did that. And so at UWM, not only do I have the capacity or the need to support the students at the main campus, but now we have UWM at Waukesha, UWM at Washington County, which are 2-year schools. And we're trying to get more of those students obviously involved in STEM and transferring into the 4-year. I agree with Chris, there are a lot of challenges at the institutional level with synergy with the 2-year and the 4-year on the curriculum side, and making sure there's transparency where students understand what they need to take at the community college level to satisfy requirements for certain majors than when they transfer into the 4-year. And students are voicing concern that they feel ill prepared when they come into the 4-year, that they feel like they weren't told which classes to take, or they get behind, they're a little bit behind in the classes at the 4-year. I know specifically for us, because of our unique design, it's been also a challenge because more recently, there are some students, and some of them URM students, who get accepted into the larger university, but they're not understanding that they got accepted to the branch campus and not our main campus. And so they, may live in the inner city of Milwaukee, right? And then they get told, well, yeah, you got accepted to UW Milwaukee, but you'll be going to Waukesha. Well, they don't have transportation to get to Waukesha. And their families, and they're not from that community, and some of the communities are more rural, and some of them sadly not always friendly towards Black and brown people. And so those students feel disenchanted because they're like, well, I thought that I was going to go to the bigger campus and start off in my engineering major or biomedical or whatever. And it's like, no, because you need to take remedial math, or for whatever reason we slotted you in this institution, but it presents a different challenge of access to that student. And so trying to figure out how to keep them excited and enthusiastic about learning about STEM and creating those pathways, again, that Tammy's group so aptly mentioned, to try to get those students more engaged and more knowledgeable about what's required at the 4-year level.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of more communication is definitely needed for sure. Okay, we're going to move on to the next group, which is the enhancing partnerships that create sustainability. So Eve, we'll turn it over to your group.
Hello, everyone. So Mary did a very nice job of taking notes for us and was going to report out, but I actually don't see her in the participants unless I missed you, Mary. Are you here? If not, I will go ahead and share. So I'll try to hit upon the highlights here, but I do know that she took very good notes. So Anika and Farah, you will definitely get notes from our session. So, we talked about partnerships, industry, community partnerships that could make Alliance work more sustainable and also increase opportunities for students. And so one of the things that we talked about is how there may be different difficulties depending on where your institution is located. So, institutions that are in more rural areas, they may have fewer local connections that they could take advantage of, whereas institutions that are in larger cities, like here in the Chicago area, we may have a lot more opportunities for making those kinds of connections with STEM industries, for instance. So we talked about that as being a potential difficulty and a difference, and maybe requires some different methods for alliances of how they're going to do that. But then also we recognize that maybe there's this need for alliances that do have more access to opportunities. If there's an option where they could do like a virtual tour, some kind of virtual session, and then offer that to alliances that are in areas where they don't have as many opportunities, that could really help out some students if we could offer those kinds of opportunities. We also talked about our session. Actually, we had a group where we had Dorinda from Ohio State, where they have already been successful in making many connections. And then we had other alliances that were kind of just getting started off. And so we were talking about, it was a nice diverse group in terms of experience with making these kinds of partnerships. And we had a student there too, Emily, who was also making some contributions to the conversation. And one of the roadblocks that we talked about is maybe getting started with making connections and doing that initial reach out to somebody at a company or corporation that you're interested in making a connection with. And that we we had this desire for maybe alliances with more experience doing this, maybe helping with what's been successful or what steps you've taken to make that initial contact. Because depending on your institution, it may be that you want to reach out and talk to some folks at your institution first before you go make that connection, because there may be some already established connections going on. And so it would be nice to have kind of a roadmap or a place to start, or what's worked, what's been successful for alliances that have successfully created a lot of partnerships. So we also talked about some ways to invite people to become involved and to establish connections. So external advisory board members might be a way to invite folks to be part of the board, and then have a connection with someone in industry or in the community that way. Also inviting them as speakers to annual conferences might be a good way to make connections. And our student, Emily, also contributed to our conversation. We had asked Emily, what sort of opportunities do you wish you had access to that you didn't? And so Emily had shared with us that she especially wanted to be able to tour some companies or industries and actually didn't have an opportunity to do that. So that kind of played into the first point I was making about how maybe those of us that are in areas where we can have a lot of community connections and industry partners, maybe we can create some opportunities for students who might not have that. And we also brought up the opportunities with the Eatons that are coming up, where I know they're doing a hybrid option, so students can join into that. So I think I hit on some of the major points there. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and anybody else that was in my room, feel free to add to the conversation as well.
Excellent. I do want to ask a question. Was there any conversation around institutions that won't let staff make those connections, and what you might do to solve that barrier?
Yeah, we did not talk about that, although I have heard of that as being an issue. Yeah, but it was more from not necessarily not being able to do that, but maybe there is an established person on campus who already has a connection with an industry. And so, you would really want to talk with that person first, or maybe that's a barrier to you developing a connection.
Excellent, great conversation. Any other comments or feedback or questions? Okay, we will move on to our last group. Definitely not the least, but Anik, it is all yours now.
Sure. So we had the privilege of talking about understaffing and budget challenges across Alliance institutions. And Brianna was so gracious to take notes for us. So I'm going to let her share out what our group talked about, but I do want to give credit and acknowledgement to Chris, Brenda, Lynn, Jill, and Dr. Jones before he left, although he wasn't able to speak before we got sucked out of the other room, but to acknowledge them and thank them so much for their contributions to the conversation. Brianna?
Hi, yes. So we had a dynamic conversation as well. Sounds like everyone else has done that too. And so we talked about two main questions. The first one was about using data to feed up information about the funding gaps that we might see in our programs, and thinking about being creative and redesigning our programs, and kind of making sure that we address any funding gaps. And so the responses to that question were, we talked about it being a juggling act of managing the budgets from different institutions, sub-awards. And we had someone share about how they had been really creative in trying to rectify that by embedding tutors in their classes, and switching from a payroll model to a stipend model, as a way to sort of make it easier to institutionalize the program, and also trying to find ways to add this support into students' financial aid packages. And so the last thing that this person shared was being able to use some of the indirect funds and redirecting them to participant support costs. So that was one really, I thought, creative way of trying to address some of the funding gaps. And the other was really a common theme of being resourceful and making sure that, you know, staff are doing everything they can, even if there's a student or a group of students who may not be eligible, but really kind of, you know, not letting up on that and finding ways to use other sources and get them connected with other resources on campus. The second question in our very limited time left was, how do you scale up programs using data, metrics, and outcomes? And so I'll just quickly share one example here. There was a staff member in our group that talked about being spread really thin, but being able to thankfully rely on other folks who may be looking out for some of the gaps and needs that aren't being addressed. And so really talking about a collaborative effort on being able to kind of have multiple eyes looking out for students that need to be served. And another example that they shared was in this particular alliance, there was a corporation that was, I guess, thinking about coming to the state, but ultimately talked about not being able to do that because that state wasn't producing enough engineers at that particular time. And so that really sort of got the attention, it sounded like, of some of the university leaders. And so that was able to be an important piece of data to help, you know, shift some funding towards some of the programs like LSAMP and some of the others. So kind of ties back to some of the partnerships that we were kind of talking about just before and how important that can be for funding. And the last piece that I'll briefly mention is about being understaffed and staffing challenges. And so the piece that we talked about there briefly was dealing with staff turnover as something that some of our alliances were seeing, and trying to find ways to make sure that onboarding processes are happening and to kind of keep the continuity of service at a very high level. And so we ended our conversation with some recommendations from our moderator, which were to make sure that we are assessing all of our programs and documenting how many students are attending and benefiting our programs, and making sure that each alliance, or excuse me, each institution within the alliance is doing their own self-reflection and evaluation in addition to alliance-wide levels of evaluation. I thought that was a really key point, and just kind of being able to have documentation of how the programs are being successful, how programs have pivoted during COVID, how, you know, evidence of some unmet need, and using that evidence of unmet need as an opportunity to talk about how popular the program is and saying, hey, we need more support. We're helping students, but there's more that need our help. So I will stop there, and I'll let anyone else from our group add if they would like to.
Thank you so much, Brianna. Oh my gosh, you took excellent notes, but also just summarized our conversation so well. I don't know if anybody else from our team wants to chime in, or folks have questions or comments about this. I'm assuming that across Alliance institutions, there's this need for more funding, right? We can never get enough money. We can always find ways on how to use it. So please provide us with feedback or any questions you may have. Okay. Either folks are getting really hungry, Farah, for lunch, and we might be standing in the way of lunch, or we just have had such wonderful conversations and dialogue. And so I want to thank everybody from that group. And again, thank you, Brianna, for sharing out. Farah, anything else in terms of dialogue or comments? We have a few more minutes here in our room before we transition into the next part of our agenda.
Yeah, so definitely thank everyone for being here, and continue the conversations offline. You know, the great thing about the Whova app is there are those community chat boards where you can post questions and continue collaborating and communicating. And then we have a networking session that is today at 4 p.m. Eastern. So I don't know if you can see on the screen here, it's the networking session for professionals and LSAMP Alliance personnel. So we can continue the conversation there as well. Those of you that took the notes and were the leaders of gathering the information from your sessions, again, make sure that you get those notes sent to Anik and myself so that we can compile them into one document to share with the entire group. And other than that, the logistics slide for LSMRCE, of course. Other than that, it's been great conversations. As always, I always look forward to conversations with other LSAMP persons. So any other?
Well, I was just going to say thank you, everyone, as the moderator. Let's please thank our presenters. If we can give them a virtual round of applause, that would be wonderful. Thanks to everyone who contributed at the roundtables. As a reminder, this session was recorded and it will be posted to the Whova app by Wednesday of next week. And lastly, if I just dropped it in the chat, but if you could please complete the post-session survey, that would be really helpful as we continue to make sure these conferences are serving your needs. Thank you again so much to everyone.
Yes, thank you again to everyone. I'm actually right now in the chat posting both Farah and I our email, just in case if you guys don't have access to the PowerPoint, making sure that you know. And please continue the dialogue with us. We are going to have some fun at this networking session. I don't know about you, but after conferences, if we're live, you know, you usually are asking people, okay, where are you grabbing something to eat and what are you going to be doing afterwards? So we're going to continue that kind of chill, having fun, getting to know folks from across the nation. So do not miss it. Come back to our room later on at the end of our meeting and come talk with us and have fun with us. We have some exciting things coming up. So thank you again.